Hi guys, I hope you're all doing really well. Welcome back to What the Horror, the channel where we talk about horror movies old and new. So this is a little bonus episode for you this week, seeing as how my review of They/Them was such a short one. I know we're already in August, but we still have so many exciting horror movies to come this year, and I thought it would be a good idea to do an episode where I list a good chunk of them for you guys. Where possible, I will include their release dates, their synopsis, and where you can watch them. I haven't included every single horror movie due for release, but there are 18 for you. Also, just to let you know, some of the films don't have trailers yet, so I won't be able to include footage of those ones for you. Okay, so let's look at the movies still to come in August. First up is Beast, starring Idris Elba. Recently widowed Dr. Nate Daniels and his two teenage daughters travel to a South African game reserve managed by Martin Battles, an old family friend and wildlife biologist. However, what begins as a journey of healing soon turns into a fearsome fight for survival when a lion, a survivor of bloodthirsty poachers, begins stalking them. Beast is probably more of a thriller than horror, being described online as a survival thriller, but I think that it's definitely horror adjacent as it is a creature feature. In fact, I read it being described as Jaws on land. The movie was filmed on location in South Africa, and if you've seen the trailer, you'll know how beautiful it looks. This wasn't one that initially piqued my interest, but I'm definitely going to give it a watch after reading an interview with the movie's director and his vision for the story. Plus, it stars Idris Elba, and he is just a fantastic actor. Beast will be released at the cinema or theatre for my American audience on the 19th of August. Next, we have Orphan First Kill, which is the prequel to the original Orphan, which came out all the way back in 2009. After escaping from a psychiatric facility in Estonia, Esther travels to America by impersonating the missing daughter of a wealthy family. Yet, an unexpected twist arises that pits her against a mother who will protect her family at any cost. I enjoyed the first Orphan, and I'll be checking this one out, but I'm interested to see how they handle their lead, Isabelle Fuhrman, being 13 years older now, especially considering that this is a prequel. I think this movie is probably going to feel different to the original because we, if you've seen the original, now know the twist element of the character of Esther. Orphan First Kill is being released on the streaming service Paramount Plus on the 19th of August. Next, we have The Invitation, starring Nathalie Emmanuel from Game of Thrones. After the death of her mother and having no other known relatives, Evie takes a DNA test and discovers a long-lost cousin she never knew she had. Invited by her newfound family to a lavish wedding in the English countryside, Evie's at first seduced by the sexy aristocratic host. However, she's soon thrust into a nightmare of survival as she uncovers twisted secrets about her family's history and the unsettling intentions behind their sinful generosity. The Invitation is described as a supernatural horror thriller, and I'm really excited about this one as the script writer Blair Butler took inspiration from Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it was apparently filmed on location in Hungary, so I'm hoping for some gothic aesthetic with this one. The Invitation comes out at cinemas on the 26th of August. Okay, that's it for August, but seeing as how we're in August already, that makes sense. Now let's look at the movies coming out in September. First up, we have Barbarian, starring Justin Long and Bill Skarsgård. A young woman discovers the rental home she booked is already occupied by a stranger. Against her better judgment, she decides to spend the night, but soon discovers there's a lot more to fear than just an unexpected house guest. I don't know much about this one, but I'm excited for it for no other reason than Justin Long and Bill Skarsgård being in it. Barbarian will be released in cinemas on the 9th of September. It was originally supposed to be the 31st of August, but they pushed it back for one reason or another. Next, we have A24's Pearl, directed by Ty West and the prequel to X that was released earlier this year. Trapped on her family's isolated farm, Pearl must tend to her ailing father under the bitter and overbearing watch of her devout mother. Hoping for a more glamorous life, Pearl's ambitions, temptations, and repressions all collide to horrific effect. It wasn't long after X was released that it was announced that a prequel was not only being made, but being released later this year. It's exciting because there were loads of details in X that were hints to Pearl's story and history, so I'm looking forward to see how they pay off in Pearl. I read that Ty West has said that he's trying to build a world out of all of this, alluding to the fact that it's all about franchises these days. So I guess we'll see if that means there'll be other films. Pearl will be released at the cinema on the 16th of September. Next we have Dark Harvest. There's not really much information on this one and there's no trailer for it either. What we do know though is that it's based off of the book of the same name that came out back in 2006. So the story will be based around a small Midwestern town where a supernatural spectre named Sawtooth Jack arises from the cornfields every fall and heads to the town's church where a gang of young boys wait for their chance to confront the legendary nightmare in an annual harvest rite of life and death. Dark Harvest is going to be released on the 9th or the 22nd of September, but I wasn't able to find out if it's a cinema release or streaming release. Next we have Don't Worry Darling, directed by Olivia Wilde. Living in an experimental community, a housewife starts to suspect that her husband's company is hiding disturbing secrets. Okay, so this one is probably more thriller than horror, but I think there are possibly going to be horror elements to it. If not, at least it's going to be horror adjacent. This one is one of my most anticipated movies of the year and I'm so excited to watch it. I mean, it's set in the 50s and it stars Harry Styles and Florence Pugh. What more could you want? Don't Worry Darling will be released in the cinemas on the 23rd of September. There were some things online saying that it would be available for streaming 45 days after the theatrical release on HBO Max, but that has since changed to be based on a case-by-case basis. This next one isn't particularly a horror movie per se, but it's definitely in the realm of horror and one that I think people are quite intrigued about, and that is Rob Zombie's The Munsters. Lily is a typical 150-year-old lovelorn vampire who's looking for the man of her nightmares, until she lays her eyes on Herman, a 7-foot-tall green experiment with a heart of gold. It's love at first sight for these two, but it's not smooth sailing as Lily's father has other plans for his beloved daughter's future, and it doesn't involve her new bumbling beau. I loved watching The Munsters growing up, so I'll definitely be checking this one out. I don't always love Rob Zombie's work, but one thing you can say about him is his genuine love for classic horror, and I'm interested to see what he does with this film. I'm not expecting amazing things, but hopefully it'll be a fun watch at least. And of course it stars his wife Sherry Moon Zombie as Lily. So The Munsters will be released on digital, Blu-ray and DVD on the 27th of September, and then later on it will be exclusively on the streaming service Netflix. Next we have Smile, which is written and directed by Parker Finn in his feature film debut. After witnessing a bizarre, traumatic incident involving a patient, Dr. Rose Cotter starts experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. As an overwhelming terror begins taking over her life, Rose must confront her troubling past in order to survive and escape her horrifying new reality. This is another movie where not a huge amount is known about it. A teaser trailer was dropped in the Top Gun Maverick viewings, and then we got the second trailer, so we know a bit about the casting and story from that, but I mean that's about it. I'll be honest, this one kind of gives me the vibes of The Ring and other movies that followed suit. Smile will be released in the cinemas on 30th of September. Next we have My Best Friend's Exorcism. There is no trailer for this one, so I don't have any footage for you. This one is based off of the book of the same name, and honestly, if there was ever a book that made me want to buy it purely because of the cover, it's this one. I mean, look at it. The synopsis of this one is, in 1988, best friends Abby and Gretchen navigate boys, pop culture, and a paranormal force clinging to Gretchen. With help from a mall exorcist, Abby is determined to compel the demon back to the pits of hell, if it doesn't kill Gretchen first. This one will tap into the 80s nostalgia that is so popular at the moment, thanks mostly to Stranger Things. I will definitely be checking this one out. My Best Friend's Exorcism will be released on Prime Video on the 30th of September. Okay, so next let's look at the movies that are due for release in October, the best month of the year, spooky season. First up, we have Halloween Ends, the third and final entry in the latest Halloween trilogy, directed by David Gordon Green. 4 years after her last encounter with masked killer Michael Myers, Laurie Strode is living with her granddaughter and trying to finish her memoir. Myers hasn't been seen since, and Laurie finally decides to liberate herself from rage and fear and embrace life. However, when a young man stands accused of murdering a boy that he was babysitting, it ignites a cascade of violence and terror that forces Laurie to confront the evil she can't control. So despite a lot of people being pretty disappointed with Halloween Kills, this is still perhaps one of the biggest horror movie events of the year. I mean, it's still a Halloween franchise and Michael Myers being released in the spooky season. I think a lot of Halloween Kills issues were in the fact that it was the middle movie in a trilogy, so I'm hoping that we'll see a payoff in Halloween Ends, which may make Halloween Kills better retrospectively. Halloween Ends comes out in cinemas on the 14th of October. Next we have Terrifier 2, which is the sequel to Terrifier, but is actually the third outing for Art the Clown. Honestly, I didn't have a whole lot to tell you about this one. We don't know much about the synopsis apart from the fact that Art the Clown targets a teenage girl and her younger brother on Halloween night. Terrifier 2 is due for release this October and will be initially released in cinemas, but will then be streaming exclusively on Screambox. Next up, we have Pray for the Devil. The Catholic Church combats a global rise in demonic possessions by reopening schools to train priests to perform exorcisms. Although nuns are forbidden to perform this ritual, a professor recognises Sister Anne's gift and agrees to train her. Thrust onto the spiritual frontline, she soon finds herself in a battle for the soul of a young girl who's possessed by the same demon that tormented her own mother years earlier. This is the latest horror movie to tap into demonology and exorcisms like The Exorcist and a lot of the Conjuring universe movies before it. But what's really interesting about this one is that it has a female protagonist performing the exorcisms. Something, as far as I'm aware, we haven't seen before. There have been plenty of females affected by the demons, but none of them kicking the demon's ass. The film's director also states that the film's story has an added layer in it, in the study of the trauma and abuse suffered by the film's protagonist. Pray for the Devil will be released in cinemas on the 28th of October. Next we have Unwelcome, an Irish movie that is based on Irish and Scottish folklore of goblins. A couple escape their urban nightmare to the tranquility of rural Ireland, only to hear stories of mysterious creatures who live in the ancient woods at the foot of their garden. As warned by their new neighbours, the creatures come when called to help souls in dire need of rescue, but it's crucial to remember that there's always a dear price to pay for their aid. I'd not even heard of this one until I started making this list, but honestly, I'm already fascinated about it. It has the potential to be really, really good and the potential to be really, really bad, like the Leprechaun remake. I love horror movies that are based on myths and legends because they often have a very old and very primal feel to them. Unwelcome will be released in cinemas, and while it was originally due to be released in February of this year, it was pushed back to the 28th of October. Okay, now we're moving into November releases, and we're starting with another one of my most anticipated movies of the year, The Menu. The Menu follows a young couple who visit an exclusive destination restaurant on a remote island where the acclaimed chef has prepared a lavish tasting menu along with some shocking surprises. Like I said, this is one of my most anticipated movies of this year, and the reason for that is purely based on the fact that it stars Anya Taylor-Joy. The woman doesn't seem to know how to pick a bad movie to star in, so if she's attached, then I'm excited. The Menu is described as a black comedy horror online, so I guess we'll see how that works out. I'm not always the biggest fan of horror comedy, but if it's not straight up comedy, but rather a dark humour, then it might work. It also stars Nicholas Hoult, Ralph Fiennes and Janet McTeer, and is directed by Mark Mylod. Mylod has previously worked on TV shows for the UK and America, including The Royal Family, Cold Feet, the American remake of Shameless and Game of Thrones. The Menu will be released at the cinema on the 18th of November. Next up we have Nanny. This is another one that we don't have a trailer for, but we know that the story follows Aisha, an undocumented nanny who is working for a privileged couple in New York. Then, as she prepares for the arrival of her son, who she left behind in West Africa, a violent presence invades her reality and threatens her way of life. Nanny will be released at the cinema on the 23rd of November, but then on Prime Video on the 16th of December. Okay, so the last two are movies that we don't have a release date for yet. We have Evil Dead Rise, which will be the 5th installment in the Evil Dead franchise. This time though, it's not set in a cabin in the woods, but instead in a high-rise in the city. The film follows a road-weary Beth who pays an overdue visit to her older sister Ellie, who is raising 3 kids on her own in a cramped LA apartment. The sisters' reunion is cut short by the discovery of a mysterious book deep in the bowels of Ellie's building, giving rise to flesh-possessing demons and thrusting Beth into a primal battle for survival as she is faced with the most nightmarish version of motherhood imaginable. Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell are both acting as executive producers, but it's directed by Lee Cronin. According to Online, Evil Dead Rise will be released on HBO Max at some point this year. And finally, we have Hellraiser. This is the 11th movie in the franchise and will act as a reboot of the original, which came out back in 1987. The premise of the movie is a young woman faces the sadistic supernatural forces behind an enigmatic puzzle box responsible for her brother's disappearance. Now, I've seen online both that the movie won't be available until 2023, but also that it will be exclusively streaming on Hulu this year. We had very last minute news on movies like Pearl, so we may still get a release date for both of these films for this year. And if not, then it's just something to look forward to next year. Okay guys, there you have it. 18 horror movies, potentially, still to come this year. It's so nice to be in August and still have so many movies that I'm excited for. Let me know down in the comments which you're looking forward to the most, which you're the most excited for. But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves and I'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye guys.